I'm going to call to order the work session for the West Lafayette School Board. We're going to take things a little bit differently than we had planned because A300, which we did not get a chance to talk about last month, is critical for staying in compliance with the law. So I'd like to talk about that one first, if that affects anyone's plan. There's your warning.
300 or 301?
Both. We're going to do the second reading of 300 and hopefully get that ready to rock. And then 301, we're going to do the first reading during the meeting. And there's no one here to speak on behalf of the public, so we'll get going. Do we have Amy on the phone?
We do not. Do you want her on the phone now then?
Well, we'll see. Let's see if we need her. We can
Sure.
call her if we do. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so regarding A300, that's the responsible use of technology policy. Is there anyone who has any issue with any of the language in that as it was presented to the board? Okay, Sue. Oh, you do. Okay, where are we looking?
Well, so in general, in regards to it, it lists that we're replacing 3 policies that I've yet to be able to find.
Okay.
So I was first trying to understand that.
Okay, let's look at the website. So if you go under board and corporation policies, did they just not get ported in correctly, do you think, or?
So I've never seen them in our policies.
Which are the numbers? Can you tell me?
The first one is 7530.02.
Okay. 7530.01 has cell phone allowance. Is it possible that that was a typo? No, that doesn't look
Maybe
like
that
it.
the corporation hadn't, if they're not in there, it would mean then the corporation didn't adopt those. So are you looking, you're looking for
She's looking at the crisscross document, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
so name it, I'm going to go, Mrs. Mumford, to, you could pull it up too if you would, Roberta, our current policies. And as we name them, let's see if they're there. You're in there already? I'm not there yet, so go ahead.
On Neola's website, that's
Yes.
listed as staff use of personal communication devices.
For 7530.02.
Now on Neola's website, not on ours. So what I
We
am,
have 7540.04, the staff technology acceptable use and safety.
okay, so what I would assume probably happened, and Rachel might remember, is that the language of 7530.02 got folded into 7540.04, but Church, Hiddle, and Antrim is working off of Neola's standard policies on that crisscross document and not necessarily the ones that we specifically adopted. So if we made changes to Neola's recommended policies, those might not be reflected in the crisscross document. So I would expect that that's what happened. So is there any specific language that's noted as being in 7530.02 that you had objection with, or is it just that you couldn't find it? Okay. And I would expect that's what happened with all of them. So in the in the future, if you wanted to look at neola.com, it would have their standard, this is what we recommend policies, and that might be where you find them. And then if you take the language or the title of that and search for it, then you might be able to find the original. Yes, Rachel.
I want to tell you that it's not going to be a straight crossover. I don't think there was a single revision that we did of policy that did not have some compression of policies. or as you suggested, consolidation of them. Some we just simply didn't choose to enact. If there was not Indiana code saying you must have this policy, we did not necessarily put that policy in if it wasn't a fit for our corporation.
That makes sense.
So I want to say, I think there's probably about a 25% difference between what we have and what they would have recommended as boilerplate text.
Right.
And I would say the same thing. I can't for here if it was adopted before I got here, but at Southmont, because we used Neola too, they made policy for everything. And yeah, and so there's some of them, Indiana code just covered it, and it was like, why would you make a separate policy for that? So I think we'll find some of those if West Side, before I got here, did the same thing that we did at Southmont, that they did at North Montgomery and so forth. So you'll probably find several like that won't cross over. But I would suggest in those situations that don't go look at Neola's, rather just look at the policy and make sure that the board's satisfied with it based on recommendations coupled with the legal citations that are in that policy. Okay. Just because that's common, several districts have done that.
So could we have Church, Churchill, and Antrim update this spreadsheet to show only the policies that is in our school district? So currently, we're saying that once we pass one of these policies, these will all be rescinded. But these aren't even all of our policies that we currently have on the books. And there's other policies that we do have that relates to this that they're not listing. And
Can you give me an example of one that relates to it that's not listed?
Yes.
Okay.
I wrote one down. I think 70, well, so I don't know, but is 7530 possibly one? Because it's not listed anywhere else that we're going to be replacing it. Ties into technology, so I'm not sure. There's another one, 3363, that is also about technology. But it's like, does this go in this one? Does this go in another one? So to me, it's hard for me to say I approve a policy on technology, and then we're going to take off, we're going to rescind some of them, but actually some of those we're rescinding aren't even listed on our, one is my first concern. And the second concern is when we finish this project with the spreadsheet that they gave us, we're still going to have quite a few policies listed under Neola that should have been replaced by these and may cause us some legal difficulties because they may not line up.
Okay.
If I may just give a
Please.
statement, I think that corporation-owned equipment, I've never seen that in many other places, so I think that is a corporation only, which is my guess is why then the technology became 7540, because the corporation already had a 7530 that they had created themselves, which, I mean, that's good information right there. So
Yeah.
I would assume at some point we'll probably have to take a look at what's left, and those are probably West Lafayette only to determine if we want to.
We can, but we can also, if you took note, Roberta, we can ask legal counsel to go ahead and cross-check if they haven't. We'll find out if they did and missed it, or that they were actually looking at just the typical Neola crossover, and we can ask them to cross-check and personalize that for us.
That would be great, because what I would love and would be helpful is we see all of the policies that are currently ours that we're following, and where are they lining up with what they're replacing. And like I said, I do think a lot of them is because they're our own, which is great, but I don't feel comfortable voting like on a technology policy when we may have ones in here that I haven't found yet that actually contradicts what we're passing. So I feel like we kind of need to know a very clear picture of where are our policies and when and how will they be replaced.
Okay, we've made note, and we will work with Amy on that.
Would it be possible, and this may be nuts, but would it be possible to accept Church, Hiddle, and Antrim's recommendations for the whole fleet of policies and just take them as they're written by CCHA and say, we are, it would have to be June, because there would be some that we would need to do second readings, so June or July. But if we took the whole slate and said, we are going to adopt their entire policy package, And then we could get rid of West Lafayette's entire previous policy package. And then we could go back through and put it through this process.
I would not be.
You would not become, okay, that's fine. I just wanted to throw that out there as a possibility. 'Cause
I understand
see-
it would be efficient, but there's a lot of personalization in our policies that are appropriate to our corporation and need to have a voice.
Okay, got it.
I have a couple of points also on this one that I have a question about in this proposed policy of 300.
Okay,
One of them is that in 7540, sorry, I just scrolled funny.
numbers are gonna drive me nuts.
7540.03.
Okay,
One of the components, and I'm not, this is not about commas and I's and T's. This is just about a concept that seems to me to be missing. In this policy, it deals with the issue of a firewall, basically, and saying that the corporation has the right to block websites that are not deemed to be helpful to the educational process, basically. I don't see that in this replacement policy, and I want to make sure that, our administrators have that as a tool, that they have the ability to block certain websites. Social media comes immediately to mind that's blocked in our schools. And I don't see that in the new policy, and I've got a question about it. The other one is, and it doesn't necessarily need to be in this one we're looking at in 300, but I think it needs to be somewhere. The other piece that I had a question about is that I believe, and I haven't been able to find it in our existing policies, but this policy talks about how students may potentially not use technology in the classroom, but nowhere does it specify that students are not required to have technology use in order to be a successful student for us. So for example, a teacher could say, everybody get your phones out, we're going to do this activity. Well, some of our students, particularly, I know most of our students at this point have phones, but I don't think that a family providing a student with the phone should be a requirement for them to be successful at school. And I don't see that covered in here. It just deals with it as though in a punitive way and doesn't deal with it in an instructional way. So those are my two issues with this particular policy.
okay. I'm adding those as notes.
It's just a socioeconomic barrier.
Absolutely. I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate you looking out for those students for whom that might be a barrier. Okay, so I've put, is there a policy that allows for firewalling certain websites, and is there a policy that states that students are not required to have a personal cell phone to be successful? Okay.
Follow up Rachel's. I'm just trying to make sure I understand. You say somebody have a cell phone, somebody don't have it, and then when you do this, make somebody uncomfortable in the classroom. Is that what
Right.
it-
So some of our teachers will use phones to do, what's the name of that app they
whatever,
do?
education, whatever purpose.
Where everybody votes. What's that? Kahoot. So if you're in a classroom, like my kids have played Kahoot as an activity, as a casual quiz. Well, if you're a student sitting there whose phone is not available to you, either your family has not provided you with one, or maybe it's
see.
prepaid and you don't have money on it, or maybe it's been taken
see.
from you as a disciplinary
Yeah, I see it.
action,
I see it.
that puts that student in a vulnerable place in the classroom, and that should not be.
That makes sense. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Is there a place in the previous policy where that was included?
I think
you
there
know of?
was, but I've not been able to find it. And so that may be one of those things that's handled as an administrative guideline.
Okay,
I just don't, and I think that our teachers usually handle that situation very thoughtfully, but I think that's just one thing that I noticed. It's kind of, this policy has always been a struggle because it's kind of written from a students are going to do bad things with their phones perspective. And I just don't know that that is one of those things that's appropriate to our students right now.
right.
They're more expected to be able to pull their device out and do something with it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I also think that it varies wildly school to school.
Yeah.
And that's always been allowed to be managed inside the school's practices. A first grader with a phone is very, very different than a ninth or a 12th grader with a phone.
Absolutely. I know when I looked at it, I was like, there is no way I could live for 8 hours a day without my phone. That's where my whole brain is. Or when I was looking at the law, the new law about cell phone use, which is why we have to take care of this one tonight, because we need to remain compliant with that. So my suggestion would be that we, since no one seems to have an issue with the language in the policy, it's more that things are missing. Let's put those in as questions to CCHA and go ahead and all of us get comfortable with this one so that we can approve it during the regular meeting so that we can stay compliant. Is that acceptable to everybody? Yes, Stacia.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry. I was just going to ask if we have to do, we need to do 300 and 301 tonight.
We need to do 300 as, we need to vote to adopt 300.
Okay.
And then 301, we have to do the first reading on.
Share with me what we're not in compliant right now in, that 300 will
are.
make us compliant in, in an hour that helps.
The law changed
Right, I
this
understand that.
session, and it goes into effect July 1st.
Right,
Yeah, and so 301 is the policy that's required by that new law
right,
that says that it defines what wireless communication devices are and says a student is permitted to use a wireless communication device during instructional time only in the following circumstances, and then lists them. And as permitted by the teacher is one, in an emergency is another, to manage their health care, like for diabetes, is a third, and as permitted by the student's IEP or 504. So that new policy 301, which we'll do a first reading of in the regular meeting here shortly, is required by the new Indiana law.
in July.
In
By
July.
July.
By July. And
Correct.
so it's April. If we do the
Right.
first reading tonight and then we can adopt it in May, then we're still compliant.
Right,
This is the question we were asking last month about how are we going to stay kosher with the law while still going through this process? How are we going to remain compliant while also changing everything? And this is one of those that rose to the top is, hey, you guys need to fix this first.
so if I understand correctly, 301, we have to pass before July 1st to be compliant.
Correct.
But that doesn't answer why you're saying we have to pass A300 tonight or we're non-compliant.
Because A300 is directly linked to A301. It's like the parent of 301.
Right,
And so 301 makes sense if 300 exists and less so if it doesn't, basically. So that whole branch of the tree is contingent on the policy and 300 existing.
But we could stall 300 and do 300 and 301 second, like,
We could. If we had changes to make to 300, we could change it and then first reading it again in May and then second reading in June, and we're still compliant.
then it's last call though. We have to move.
Correct. We would have less time.
we're not allowed to pass the two of them at the same time.
No, we are.
Yeah.
We are. I just don't want us
So we have-
to get into the weeds of 300 and not pass anything and then end up accidentally non-compliant. Yes.
So when we've done this previously, basically we've looked, to use your analogy, we've looked at the whole branch at the same time.
Okay.
And that's worked okay. I think actually it can be helpful for people new to reading policy to be able to look at, the trunk of the tree and the branches all at the same time, because
Uh-huh.
then you see that there's crossover. That's been one of the downsides of Neola, is that it's done multiple times in ways. So
Right.
I want to follow what Church is suggesting in terms of order, but the majority of the people here do not have experience revising policy, and so maybe that's,
Roberta and I actually suggested that 301 come now with side by side, because that way principals can get them in the handbooks. So that's more of the time, because you're right, Dacia, if we didn't think handbook, we've got till July 1. But if it's possible, if the board is able to look at the two, and by the time that 301s had a first reading and second reading, they very well could both be at the same time if you decided to stall 300 and have them side by side. But really the goal for us was that, hey, if we get this new policy approved, then it can be included in each of the handbooks.
And the rest of the tree is civility and decorum, which nobody had an issue with last month. And communicable diseases, which probably isn't real pursuant to cell phones. So the rest of the branch should be different enough that we should be okay, but I see your point, and that's a good one.
When is the deadline for the handbooks?
I think we would need to have them passed in May, because they want to bring handbooks to the board too at that time in May, and then after that they're going to quickly work on publishing those.
Okay. So I have additional questions on 300 and 301, just so you know.
Okay, let's do it one at a time. Let's take 300 first, please.
Well, my question is, I'm not sure which it goes. So my question is, we have 300 that was handed to us that's similar, that's been passed in other school districts over the years. Now that we're bringing in 301, I'd love to hear from legal counsel, is anything changing in 300? Are we, it's a very long, wordy legal document. Now that we're bringing in 301, does that affect anything in 300 is my first question.
They should be aligned with each other as they're written, because they were written by the same firm.
And if legal counsel, that's fine if that's what they're saying. And then some of the mistakes, which I can send later. So for example, in A300 paragraph 3, on the first page says, that second line, users take seriously the responsibilities associated with signing this user agreement. This policy is not a user agreement that people are signing. So this needs
Signing the user agreement would correct that, right?
But do we have everybody sign a user agreement?
Yes.
Even this is addressing a whole variety of things. So I would like legal counsel to say, is it just a wordage? It's not totally clear to me. And then there's just another typo that, like I said, is I can send in on the last page. All students and those staff members under training, all students and staff members shall receive annual training. So just
Where are you with the all students and staff members?
Number 14.
number 14 about the training.
Okay, all students and staff members, those should be removed. Is that
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So those are so far just the edits that I found, but the questions that I have is, and I don't know if it goes with 300 or 301, but how do we handle when a student records something that happens at school? So, a student's being bullied, they've recorded it, they're not posting it on social media, which I think needs to be in our policy clearly. We've had issues in the past with this, but they share it with administration. Is this allowed? Is this not allowed? This has definitely come up in our school district in the past, and I would like to see it included in one of those two, but I don't know which one.
Have you looked at policy A300 section 5E, which says any recording made on school grounds or during instructional time, whether in person or virtual, may be subject to copyright laws and the protection of the privacy rights of others, including personally identifiable information about a student protected by the family FERPA, where IT services staff or other corporation staff have reasonable suspicion that a recording, data, or image was made in violation of this policy, such item may be confiscated by the corporation staff. Any use of a recording device to invade the privacy of another person will result in sanctions for the person making the recording. Does that satisfy?
Well, what I'm saying is I understand that's there, and the way I read it is as long as they don't post it on social media, they're allowed to do any recordings and go share it with an administration.
That's interesting, because I don't see social media mentioned in there. So
No, I just mean when you're saying the privacy of others, I feel like that if you're posting something on social media, But
Well,
that's,
if I take a video of you and show it to Sean, that could violate your privacy as well. So I don't think the posting is necessary to the privacy violation. Does that make sense?
yes, I would
So-
like this question, I'd like to hear from legal counsel
Sure,
what their
she'll be here soon.
recommendation is in this situation.
Okay.
since, this has come up before.
Okay, she'll be here soon. Ask.
I think another component of that recording is, and I'm fairly certain it's Indiana law, but there cannot be a recording taken in any of the restrooms.
Yeah,
And that's part of our current policy, 5136, and that's one I have not seen, but I actually think by law, I think we added that at some point, because by law, we couldn't allow any recording in one of our restrooms or locker rooms, basically any place that a student is changing clothing.
okay.
I think that was an edit at one point, because the law changed to that.
Which one did you reference that will also tie into this?
5136. 5136 deals with PCDs, personal communication devices, and that's where the split is. It's grade K-6 has a policy, in 7 through 12 has a part of that policy. And this is the one that essentially is the parallel to 300 that we're looking at.
Okay.
So, this is the one where this kind of already addresses legally what is in this, in terms of it being okay for an IEP or okay for medical use, or, that. This is 5136 is the policy that addresses it.
Okay, good to know. I'm gonna
It's in the
write that
student,
down.
it's in the student 5,000s are students, so it's in the student section.
Okay. All right.
We have this is just such a big one. I was surprised that, I don't know how we're going to get this through so fast. There's just so many questions because we have so many policies that we're referencing. So for example, we have a policy about recording in the workplace that talks about
Can I have the
staff
number?
and recording. It's number 3363. So my question is this something that actually isn't needed? Is it something that, this really isn't handled, or is it handled?
Yes, it seems to be responsible use of technology, so probably it should be in this area, in this policy.
Do we have an update on when Amy Matthews will be here? 10 minutes. Which is going to take us right to time to switch. Okay. Are there any other issues with 300 that we need to make note of? Yeah.
So I noticed that they have the social media session and talking about cyberbully, and
Where are you in the?
310 item 10. So yeah, it covers it kind of briefly, but actually it can be a very important issue, and I wonder how this piece is related to some other policy like the harassment. So because that one doesn't address cyberbully that much, but this one kind of briefly mention it, but it can be a big thing nowadays.
I'm not sure I'm understanding your question. I'm sorry.
So I feel to address the cyberbully issue, we need a more elaborated procedural policy, but here you kind of briefly mention it. But in the other harassment document, it doesn't cover much of the cyberbully issue. So I just wonder, where this piece belong to, and we can provide more information about it.
So if you look ahead a little bit to C200 is the anti-bullying policy, and we may never get there. And there's also C350, which deals with student discipline. So it would be my expectation that that would also fall under those. But the organization isn't going to be a perfect one-to-one when you're taking 3 dozen policies and condensing them down to half a dozen, right? Like, if you're taking 36 and making them into 6 policies, it's not going to be a direct one-to-one situation.
In that case, and if we have other policy that address this issue intensively, maybe in this policy, we can write the reference number, say C, for details, CA.
If we do that though, and it changes in the future, that leaves you open for mistakes where it doesn't get updated. If, let's say, they add C200.1, which is cyberbullying at some point in the future, and whoever's on the board at that time doesn't update the technology policy, then you haven't closed the loop. So I would say that if the legal experts think that it's okay to not put that reference in there, that would, I mean, there will still be a policy about anti-harassment and bullying at some point. Yeah, Rachel.
That is something that we're trying to eliminate, is the cross-referencing, because the Indiana code at the bottom is already directing people to further information. I mean, I understand what you're getting at is treating it as a user-friendly, each individual document, but the objective of this restructure is so that somebody could type in a word and get one policy, rather than the experience we're having of typing in a word and getting 10 policies that might conflict with one another. I mean, that's frankly what's created the confusion right now.
Yes,
I
Rachel.
think that'd be a valid question for legal counsel, because they are they're bringing it up here under training. Under 14, they're talking about cyberbullying in this policy.
Okay.
So I think understanding.
I'm not sure that we've gotten that policy. What did I say it was? 8300? No,
C200 bullying, we have got.
we have that one. Okay.
Yeah.
And
then my other question on this one is also AI. So ISBA, when I was reading their recommendation, they were recommending that we work with legal counsel on AI. So a question I have for legal counsel is, where does that fit in all of these? Is it going to be its own policy? Does it go with 3? I don't even know how this works. So another question on technology.
okay. I have made a note. Hopefully I-65 will clear up and she'll be here soon. Anything else on 300? Or, yes, Lauren.
Yeah, on our current policy 7530.01, they talk about cell phone allowance. And my understanding is our senior management, they have their cell phones for emergency contact, instant contacts, and there should be some policy regarding how much the company cover that allowance, kind of allowance. So I think probably that should be also included in this policy. So
Rachel.
That's in their contracts. Is that correct? That is in their contract.
yeah,
So
but
it's contracted per individual.
okay, but yeah, this is the general. Just say we have some policies regarding to that. This is our school board policy. Just generally speaking, we should have some things to take care of that kind of things. And in the detail, how to implement, that's the administration's issue. So I think we need some, maybe 1 sentence, 2 sentences to require school administrations have some guidance or something to handle the allowance for their management.
What doesn't work about doing that through the contract process then?
Huh?
What does not work about doing that through their contract?
Yeah, that's contract is contract, and this is the school board policy. So I think it's high level expectations from school board, and then how do you want to implement that in the through the contract or through other means? That's administration's.
So, but what we do, the policy says that we're responsible for the contract negotiation. We negotiate the contract. The contract includes benefits for our administrators.
Okay.
If we put a schedule, like the compensation for Dr. Reiner's cell phone allowance might be different than the compensation for, say, another administrator's contract, so it wouldn't necessarily make sense to make a uniform policy. And to me, like the authority resides in the contract negotiation, not in the school operational policies.
Yeah, I'm not talking about details. Say our current policy is saying like this, the superintendent should develop administrative guidelines that provide for stipends or the province of appropriate technology devices that allow for 24/7 emergency communications, or something like that. And that's our school board's kind of expectations. Then in detail, how they do that, how much they pay, that's their issues. It's not ours.
I'm just questioning if what you're talking about is two different cars
Okay.
to drive. So like one car drives to the contract and one car drives to policy. Both things are managed by the board. Both things are approved by the board. So it's a redundancy to do it, I think. I don't know if I'm saying that right or if I'm correct, Dr. Reiner. I feel like we've dealt with things like cell phone stipends and technology use stipends through the contract negotiation process. I might be dreaming that.
No, it's listed in the contract. That's correct.
So I guess I didn't understand. I thought our principals everyone has the same contract.
No, okay, I'm not sure what you're asking now. So each principal and assistant principal, the superintendent, we have a cell phone.
And those are in the admin handbook.
And if you're asking if everyone has a teacher contract, yes, we're all under a teacher contract and those are all the same. But my contract looks different in my addendum than what the principals look like in the handbook. Does that make sense? So they don't have addendums because it's all under a handbook. I'm not in the handbook, so I have an addendum.
I guess I understood your contract was different, but I thought the principals do not have addendums or,
Correct.
like Ms. White was saying, individual cell phone things in each principal's contract. I thought they were all the same.
In the administrative handbook.
Handbook, which
where
is,
that's
which-
governed.
yeah.
That I understand. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I saw Amy Matthews pull up. Maybe not. So hopefully we will have many answers, and it is 5:50 already. So we're not going to get far. Are there any? Let's see. Last time we had not gotten around to discussing whistleblower protection. Just with a show of hands, does anyone have issues with A175 whistleblower protection? You do, okay. How about A225 reporting child abuse? Is there, okay. No tobacco, A250. Okay. Are there any that you don't have any
Questions
on? Okay, cool. So we'll just hold off and wait for council.
That policy 301, we don't have any issues, right? We just for today first reading.
Right.
Okay.
Does anyone need a break between this meeting and the next? Good, okay.
Why don't you look at the policy that there were 3 different
Oh, good
portions
call.
and just get those ready for the board to vote if the board feels like they accept.
So on A100, there was grab that one. There were 3 different suggestions for that one. Sorry, my computer is not being used. Here. Okay, so A100. We had Are they all in this one document? They are, right?
You look at the
No,
work
they're all in
session.
separate documents, aren't
Yeah,
they?
in other words, yes, so you'd look at it.
Okay, so on A100, hi, welcome. We have 9,000 questions. Glad you're here.
Well, hopefully I have 9,000 answers.
Great, that will be good. Okay, so on A100, Lawrence had added language that said the corporation shall develop and implement preventative educational programs on harassment and unlawful discrimination. These programs target student staff members, including teachers, administrators, and support personnel, volunteers, parents, guardians, and other relevant stakeholders. These programs shall be designed to increase awareness, promote understanding, and provide skills and strategies for addressing harassment and discrimination effectively. And you were okay with that language, and the administration was okay with that language, correct?
We were okay with all three, right? Yes.
Is everyone else okay with that language?
I feel it's extraneous to what's already happening, but I don't have a problem with the word used.
Okay. So let's talk about leaving that one in for the time being. 'Cause we gotta get somewhere. Where's the next one? A 300 number 2 involved
That was my, in the first paragraph, change in language.
yes, I've got Dacia's here. I'm looking for yours. Keeping all this straight may end me. There it is. Okay, thank you. So that changed the first paragraph to read, the school board does not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, including gender identity and expression, disability, age, religion, military status, ancestry, genetic information, or any other legally protected category, collectively protected classes in its programs and activities, including employment opportunities. Is that okay with, that's okay with you? That's okay with you? Yes, Stacia.
So I am not understanding why we changed West Lafayette Community School Corporation to the school board.
We wondered that, but we were okay with it. But I don't know
And
why.
as I checked all the other policies that
Well,
also were replaced,
there-
no one else is only the
there are
school board.
there are times when you see school board, when it's, you want to draw extra emphasis to the fact that this is the policy of the school board versus an administrative. I mean, it's all policy of the school board, but sometimes you emphasize that. It doesn't matter either way. If you feel like for consistency, you want it to be West Lafayette Community School Corporation, but they're kind of interchangeable in a policy. But the reason you do see them is there are some times when it's kind of a little extra board ownership. That's all it is. But it doesn't change anything legally. It's just stylistic.
Okay.
So I'd love to know why that's what you recommended.
I think it
since
just
didn't see
pulled
anywhere
out
else.
of the, I think it just pulled out of the old policy that way. I'm not hung up on it, not saying WLCSC at the top of it. I'm more concerned with the second yellow block.
There's a second.
And then why did we remove or tolerate harassment? That was the other one that I saw in all the other, as I reviewed other school districts, similar policies, those two things were different than all the rest that I reviewed.
Am I missing a revision? Are you talking about the second yellow block in?
In that same first paragraph.
Okay,
Correct,
sorry.
yeah.
Okay.
Again, this was just pulled out of the previous. I don't have strong feelings about removing or tolerate harassment.
I mean, I'd like to see them both in just because at least my research of at least all the school districts that you'd sent, it felt like it was more consistent and I, did not discriminate or tolerate harassment and the school corporation. So
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that.
but the
Okay.
rest of it I good with.
Okay, leave in, so we're gonna leave in Rachel's correction and add or tolerate harassment.
It actually was already there. If you just to simplify, like that was originally what
Right.
CCHA.
So what we're gonna do, if we can all agree on all three of the changes, then we're gonna vote on A100 as, or we're going to present A100 as a first reading of the new policy with those changes, put it up as it will exist, and then it'll be for second reading in May, because this is April, all week. Okay. And then, yeah, Lawrence.
Go ahead, you finish.
Okay. Are you still talking about Rachel's or are we talking
Yeah,
about?
Rachel's.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, there's just equal gender status. I understand that. I have no problem with that. I think that's should be in there. But the only concern I have is legally speaking. So basically, we put the gender things in there, kind of we extended the definition of discrimination, harassment. It had really increased the legal liability.
Oh, you mean by having the gender language?
Yeah, gender.
Either way, whether you put it in or not, you have the same legal obligations. It's really a matter of whether you want it to be more prominent
Okay.
or not. It doesn't
So
change.
legally speaking,
The
doesn't-
legal obligation is there
doesn't-
regardless, because it is one of the, where it says or other protected classes. It's part of the sex discrimination legally, but it
Okay.
also in some ways is considered another protected class. So
Okay.
either way, whether you have it or not, you've got the same obligations. But that's always something good to think about of adding
Yeah, that
language.
is
Does that add legal obligations? Here it doesn't.
Sure, thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, I have, other than that, I have no problem with this.
I want to get through 100. We got to get through one. Okay, and then Dacia's amendment to A100 was the search. Okay, is it that one? Number 3?
No, it was the first one without a number, so we just have looked at 2 and 3. So now
Okay.
you need to suspect suggested revision A100.
Okay. Got it. Okay. And that was to change the Title IX and Title VI coordinators and the non-discrimination coordinators, and to add the more specific generic email addresses that will go to the right
Yes, that we
person.
talked
You're
about
good.
last time.
You're
Yeah.
good. Everybody okay with that? Okay, so what we're going to do then is rewrite it with all of those changes in one document. And from now until
Next month.
next month, people will have the chance to digest it. And then next month, it can still be the second reading. Is that correct?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes.
great. You got all that, Roberta? Okay, super. Okay, we're going to adjourn the work session and begin the regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees. Pull this back up. Okay. Yes, we got a minute. The April meeting of the Board of School Trustees for the West Lafayette Schools. Before we begin, I would like to briefly say thank you to all of the first responders who came when we called. thank you for everything you've done to keep our school community safe. And thank you, Sean, for working so well with your team to nurture those vital community partnerships. I also want to thank our administrators, teachers, and staff who kept calm and protected our kids. I've always known that you're an amazing group of people, but wow, the stories I've heard about that Tuesday truly have left me choked up and speechless. And finally, to our students, I am so proud of you for staying calm, following directions, and having the courage to show up Wednesday ready to learn. Your generation is resilient in ways that mine never had to be. And I want to acknowledge that while at the same time acknowledging that you shouldn't have to be. I want to assure you that your grown-ups are doing everything we can think of to learn from the events of March 26th and to grow from them so that we can do an even better job of keeping you safe. And finally, I would like to assure everyone that I will do everything in my power to get us out of here by 8 o'clock so that we can boiler up in the comfort of our own homes. So with that, I would like to welcome our Scripps Regional Spelling Bee winner and Mrs. Pizarro's, or, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Kathy, both of you, everyone, come on up. Kathy Parker, thank you for coming.
Good evening. Thanks. So thank you for letting us be here today. This is Sharonya's second
Yes.
consecutive victory in the Scripps Regional Spelling Bee of Northwest Indiana. We had 32 students compete from different schools around the 10-county area. Well, 10 counties were invited. I think only 7 participated. This is Sharonya's third year participating and her second consecutive year winning. And she's only in the 6th grade. So we have our little plaque for her. It says 2024 Scripps Regional Spelling Bee of Northwest Indiana, sponsored by Purdue University, because they are a very generous sponsor for us. Presented to Sharonya Carr, that's you. West Lafayette Intermediate School. First place, hosted by Laura Educational Opportunities Incorporated, because we're changing our name from the Lafayette Adult Resource Academy to Laura Educational Opportunities. Proudly donated by Awards Unlimited. So, Sharonya, it's a big night here. Tell us what your winning word was again, if you remember. Theorem. Theorem. Okay, so I have to give you a little story about me personally. We're very excited for the Boilermakers. Very excited about Purdue tonight. I grew up in Storrs, Connecticut. So I've been, weighing reasons why I would vote for UConn, why I would vote for Purdue. I've lived here since for the last 22 years. I lived there for 21 years. They have the cutest mascot, but even my retired UConn professor dad is rooting for Purdue.
That's right.
So trying to get used to spell Boilermakers.
Good.
Go ahead, Boilermakers.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Sharonya.
Great job, kiddo. That's awesome. And as we always say at this point in the meeting, we are happy to have you, but you are also free to go home and enjoy your evening because the rest of the meeting is pretty much a snooze for kiddos. So, all right, thank you very much for coming. We have moved to a consent agenda format to try to move this song along. I'm sorry? Shoot, you're right. Sorry, but we're not going to do that yet. We're going to take our communication from the audience, which is Mr. Kusick. Welcome. I scrolled too far.
Thank you again. It's a great job that the school did last Tuesday. My comments here are on my forever topic of transient housing, and I just thought I'd pass some information to you and also some encouragement. And I'm going to read just so that I get through this. Transient housing within the West Lafayette School District. April 1st, the City Council passed a resolution unanimously requesting a unified zoning ordinance amendment to ban transient guest housing in West Lafayette neighborhood zoned R1. I think that's a great step. The process for the unified zoning ordinance amendment will take a few months. The area planning commission staff will now work on that agreement. May 1st, the area plan commission ordinance committee will consider the amendment as presented. If agreed, then on May 1st, well, they'll consider that on May 1st. If agreed, then May 15th, the full area plan commission will consider and vote on the amendment. June 3rd, the amendment will come back to the West Lafayette City Council for approval. That's the best possible timeline moving forward. Naturally, in all those intermediate steps, there could be some disagreements and some rewriting and that sort of thing, but at least we're on the road to having the transient guest housing issue addressed. And I would urge the school board to keep an eye on the agendas for the APC ordinance committee and the full APC staff. Again, this is great progress. However, our work is not done. As one of many residents of nearly 400 residents who signed a petition against the most recently transient house guest request on Princess Drive, we all appreciated the school board's presence and voiced comments against the transient house request by Dr. Yen, who spoke very well. It was also nice to have Mr. Wang in the audience also. It was also the school board's presence at the ABC meetings is imperative to have. Chad Spitznagel of the city actually mentioned that that was a huge step forward in the presentations at the zone board meetings. It's been suggested that the school board's voice needs to be present, needs to present factual reasons as to how the transient houses will potentially negatively affect our school district. So I would ask that the school board pull some data together and at the next presentations at the area board of zoning or city council or the APC, that there's a voice there and those facts are presented. That's, so in all of those, I would encourage the school board to have a voice at the upcoming area board zoning meetings, the city council meetings, the area plan commission meetings, to have your voice heard. It is important. Until the unified zoning ordinance ban transient guest house in West Lafayette School District Zone 1 R1 is implemented, the residents and the school board must keep the pressure on. On a parallel path, the residents will continue to push for enforcement of current laws and encourage administrative changes that will make enforcement realistic with the city officials. School board support on this parallel path is also very important. Again, thank you for your support, and I hope to keep seeing you guys in all those meetings.
Thank you very much. Okay, now I've scrolled to the correct place and we are going to work on the consent agenda. Is there anyone who would like to pull any item out of the consent agenda? Super. On behalf of Michelle, I'd like to share that claims for the corporation, including the Wabash Valley Education Center for the period of March 5th through April 3rd, totaled $3,125,748.36. I think that was almost as fast as you usually do that. So
Maybe a little bit more practice.
I'm working on it. So with that, I would ask for a motion. Moved by Mrs. Witt. Second by Mr. Shaw. Oh, and I'm going to get this wrong for a while, but I've decided to start using first names because it seems awkward to call people by their last names when I would normally say, hi, Rachel, instead of hi, Mrs. Witt. So here we go. Great. Any comments on our consent agenda this evening? Mr. Wayne, Lawrence, all of us.
I saw there's on the payment, there's 38,000 paid to TSC for school bus things. So is that every month we pay that, or it's just kind of occasionally payment? The school bus part?
The 30.
Typically don't take questions during the agenda, so that's why I
Oh,
wasn't
you don't?
expecting
Oh,
anything.
I'm sorry. There 38,000 to TSC for the buses.
So yes, we get a bill every month and we try to pay that every month. Sometimes it may be in between, so.
So normally
And that
per
could be
year.
different each month depending upon when we have, if we have to have maintenance done on a bus, if we have to have more
Okay.
gas one month because of more field trips or so on and so forth.
Okay. So every year, how much you have rough numbers?
I mean, that, I would need
that's
need that question ahead of time to tell you,
Oh, no,
okay?
that's okay. No, never mind. Because I check the previous, I didn't see
Yeah.
this kind of amount, so I just want, but that's fine.
It
Now
could
we
be
get,
because of the way the months go.
yeah, maybe it's not a big deal. I just try to understand how much we pay TIC.
And
for
we
the
will be
document.
bringing that contract in the next few months, and so I can bring more information on that at that time.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
That's okay. I'm just trying. It's not nothing. I have no problem with that. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please show your hands. That is 6-0. All right, moving on, we have no unfinished business. So we're going to move to number 6, which is our board policies. The first thing I would like to do is on policy A100. During our work session, we discussed 3 revisions that we all were in agreement on. So we will be voting to approve those 3 revisions as a set. Could I have a motion, please? Moved by Rachel. Is there a second? By Tom. Okay. So again, on A100 only, we had, each of the 3 of you had a suggestion. It seemed like we were all in accord on all 3 of those suggestions. So if they're approved by the whole board, what we will do, Mrs. Julian and myself, we will compile all 3 suggestions into one master document. And this is the first reading of that master A100. And then next month will be its second reading and we can vote to approve it as we have amended it. Okay, does anyone have any
Yeah,
questions?
just oh, go ahead. You can.
Go ahead. Lawrence, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick confirm. So right now we are voting for these 3 amendments.
Just to A100,
Yeah,
not
just
anything else.
incorporated this. Okay.
Right,
yeah.
voting to incorporate the 3.
Yeah.
Yes, Rachel.
Thank you.
I'll just make note for the record that 2 of the revisions are being done as presented. The one that I put forward, there's a few wording changes in terms of the school entity, so that might look different between this meeting and what's presented. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, yes, for
Which I,
delineating. Yeah.
when can this be posted so that the community would be able to see it more than just a couple days, and get feedback, or just trying to understand the process?
Can we get that done before the end of the week, you and I? The updating of A100 with the changes for posting for the community? Yeah, okay, so by the end of the week. Okay, anything else? All those in favor of approving the 3 amendments, please raise your hand. Okay, that's 6-0. Great, fix and post. Okay. Now, we have about 1,000 questions for you, Amy, about all of them. Let me pull that up. We were looking at A300, which is of some urgency because of the recent changes to the law. So, one question was, is there a policy or part of a policy that allows for firewalling of certain websites or makes that part of what we are allowing ourselves to do?
Yeah, that is incorporated because that is part of, you should be firewalling websites under the, it's either the Children's Internet Protection Act or there's 2 different federal laws. I get them confused, but one of them requires you to do that. So even if you didn't have it in policy, you would have to do it. But your policy states you're going to follow those. How you do that should not be in policy because it's constantly changing. It's a technological, but rest assured, you absolutely have not only the ability, but the obligation through this A100 or A300 technology policy that references those various laws. Yeah.
Is there any benefit to a line that says federal guidelines on firewalling websites will be followed? Is there
Well,
any benefit to that, or is that
Not really. I mean,
cloudy?
it's already built in.
Okay.
If we look into A300 itself, I can tell you which of those two policy, or which of those two federal laws are the ones. Must be SIPA, Children's Internet Protection Act. It's either SIPA or COPA is another one.
Okay.
But COPA is one of those federal citations at the end. There are 5 citations at the end of this particular policy. 4 of them are federal, and within those are what require the firewalling. You could certainly add that language, but you have the obligation regardless.
Okay.
It doesn't add anything, if that makes sense.
My only reason for questioning if it should be in there is there have been times historically where students and or parents have been frustrated when a site was blocked that they did not feel was appropriate to block. And I wondered if it wouldn't be helpful to have some reference of it in here in language.
It's called filtering. It's under M.
Under M?
Yeah, it's just filter, not firewall is the
Okay.
word that's used. So it's M, it's on page
4.
4, yeah. It says, in order to comply with the Children's Internet Protection Act and Indiana Code 2026-5-40.5, the board has implemented technology protection measures that protect against, e.g. filter or block, access to visual displays, depictions. So that's your section.
Okay.
It just didn't use, it used filter rather than firewall, and that's the language that's in the statutes.
So it is inappropriate materials is where maybe we would be making a judgment call on social media that would be protected in that inappropriate content. Okay.
Yeah, and that's a very case-by-case basis.
I'm comfortable with that then. Thank you.
Okay, super. The next question we had was, is there a policy or part of a policy that states that students are not required to possess a personal cell phone in order to be successful in our schools? So for example, if a teacher is using Kahoot, which is like a quiz.
Sure.
Yeah,
I love Kahoot, it's fun.
yeah. So we're concerned that we make sure that the kids who are being punished and don't have their cell phone this week, or whose family chooses
Don't
not
miss
to.
out.
Yeah, they don't miss
Yeah,
out.
there is not such language, but there's certainly no harm in adding that.
I would like that. If it-
Okay. Would you be able to write something legal sounding?
Yeah.
Legal. Great. We can review that next month. And I've made notes. Okay. And then let me know, okay, you're good. In the first section, Statement of Corporation Policy, the 3rd paragraph, it refers to signing this user agreement, but there's no user agreement included. So should it be the user agreement?
Yeah, or a user agreement.
Okay, so we'll
yeah.
need to adjust that too,
Yeah.
please. And then, under 14, training on page 9, all students and staff members shall receive annual training. It says those staff members, which is kind of awkward.
I think it was probably between the decision of staff members who work directly with students, because you wouldn't necessarily be training your child nutrition staff, for example.
Right.
So I think actually there's wording left off.
That makes sense. Could you also fix that for us,
Yep.
please?
Can you tell me again where that was?
Yes, it was under 14, training,
Okay.
and it's the word those that threw
Those, yeah.
us.
And
then,
so it's those staff members who work with students on technology.
yep,
And we can add, I mean, really all professional staff members, but there may be like some teaching assistants who go in there too. But that's really the dividing line, because you don't need your bus drivers or your child nutrition staff to get this training.
right, makes perfect sense. All right, and then we're looking next at page 3, letter E, talks about recordings. And there's nothing in there in particular about recording in restrooms, but we did have a policy previously that specifically said that was not allowed. Is that correct?
Right. I recall there being some change that we had to make to policy about no recording in restrooms or locker rooms.
Well, there is a separate, this is use of technology. there is also a separate policy that is specifically about recording that essentially says the only right anybody has to record anything are meetings of the school board itself. And that other than that, there can be prohibition for privacy, for educational disruption and all sorts of things.
Do you happen to know the policy now?
I don't off the top of my head, but I can find it, and if it's not in this batch, we can put it high up in the next one.
I just want to make sure that remained covered. That's a
Yeah.
critical piece.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, so we'll, I'll find it and we'll put it in the high priority policies.
Okay. And then also, we had a question about AI. Daisha, could you please explain?
Yes, but can I follow up with a few of those questions that I also had about the recording?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yep.
So if I found it correctly, it looks like it's G350 audio, video, and digital recording of meetings. Is that which one you're referencing? Or is it a different one?
It
And
might
recording
be, but it
school
might
board might be
also,
something different.
yeah, it might be
Okay.
something different.
Because I
But it
did
might
have
be.
several
I don't have
questions just in studying our policies. We currently have a policy that prohibits employees from recording anything. It says even though state law says you can, employees cannot before getting, obtaining consent. So that's what I was curious. Does that go in here?
No,
It
that,
will go in the
and
recording
there
one
won't be a
also?
recording in the workplace, it'll just be a general.
There's no
everybody.
recording
Yeah. there's-
allowed.
Right, and the state law is just says anyone anywhere in Indiana can record if one party is aware of it. But a school and other organizations can make their own rules beyond that, and you can regulate recording on school property.
Okay, so the recording that you're going to bring to us, a future policy that deals with recordings, it's our own decision how we want to handle it. It's not state law. Is that what I'm
Correct.
Understanding? Because I had brought up a question that we've had in the past where like a child is recording a bullying incident.
Okay, well,
And how
we need to
that's
be
handled.
careful about if it's recording of students,
Right.
there is federal law. Because
Okay.
then that gets into creating records that
Okay.
impose on student privacy.
Okay,
So what I was talking about before is just a general, outside of education, anyone anywhere in Indiana, has nothing to do with schools,
okay,
can record. But there's a whole set and whole body of education laws as well. One of them, and the biggest one being, if you're creating records about students, that can
Okay.
infringe on student privacy. So that's the number one reason to be very strict about recording on school property, because obviously there are students everywhere.
so will that be in the one that you were just referencing about the bathrooms? Will that be covered in that one?
Yeah, yeah,
So
There's
those
one that's
questions
just
will come
specific
at
to
future
yeah,
to that one.
yeah.
So what would happen to prep, so what happens if a child does record something and brings it to an administrator? How is that handled, that child?
Through the student handbook, subject to discipline under the student handbook.
Okay, so if they record
That's
anything.
another reason why you don't want to get too deep into how you do student aspect, because really by law, the student code of conduct is where you lay out consequences.
And what if they were to record like a teacher? Do we cover that in the handbook? Do we cover that in the policy? Where is that?
Well,
Like if they didn't have any students in it and they just recorded a teacher? is
well,
that
they're
allowed?
generally violating board policy. Any unauthorized recording is going to violate board policy, because board policy is going to refer generally to unauthorized recording. And the rule that is most practical is to really have it be a default that recording is only allowed in the school board meeting, which is required by law. And otherwise, you have to get permission, which is generally done through handbook, administrative guideline.
Got it.
Yeah.
That answers it. Thank you.
So one of the other tricky spots that's come up over the years is how recording is done. Say a sixth grade orchestra concert or a production
they're
during
public
the
events,
day because
yeah.
they're public events
Yeah.
or so like they do a play in our intermediate school where their parents come in and record the students doing the play. That's come up from people before who were uncomfortable with other parents taking videos. And then of course the parents want to take videos of
Right.
this precious
Yeah,
moment.
that's
So
our-
what does the law say about this?
That is a public event. So theoretically, you could prohibit all of that, but number one, you're never going to be able to police that. And number two, from a community and parent access perspective, that's not really going to fly. So what I'm giving you is more of a practical than a legal answer. The legal answer is you could prohibit it because the only right anyone has to record anything is the school board meeting. But that's the other one that, as a practical matter, folks are going to record.
That gets difficult.
Yeah.
I could see a scenario, I think a long time ago, we had a scenario where a child, their parent chose they could not participate something that was going to be recorded. They had a concern about a custody issue.
Yeah.
And they said, my child just cannot be in it. And the administrator worked with that. And I just want to make sure that our policy allows them the flexibility to do that.
Yeah, well, and that also, there's so much that's interconnected. That also gets into the student records policies. Because the official recording, the ones by the parents aren't, but if you have any official recordings by the school, that becomes a student record, and you have directory information, which anything that is depicting them. So if you have photos of events, those are not privacy protected unless they opt out of that. So the students that opt out are the ones that you'd want to be potentially asking about that situation of recording. But as you said, it's very hard to police the unofficial parent videos and photos.
Thank you for explaining that.
Sure.
You, go ahead.
I wonder how to deal with
The situation that when bullying is happening, a bystander is recording the bullying. Are they allowed?
That recording is also, is still, I mean, if they were doing it for the purpose of prevention, that'd be one thing, but the prevention is to get to an administrator and get help, not to
Right.
be there and recording it. So that would still be a violation of technology and student privacy.
I mean, a student may be recording it as the evidence to report to.
Right, but really the duty is immediately report to an administrator to get it to stop.
So if they do so, that's not a violation.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, does anybody have any additional questions about A300?
Did you want me to ask about the AI question now?
Yes, that'd be great.
So the question I had was ISBA had sent out a message saying that we should be looking into adding AI usage in our board policy and development.
Yeah, and that is, in fact, I had emailed your administration about this earlier. This is a weird quirk of timing. When we sent you these original policies, we were in the process of working on that. I know I've talked with your administrator, but I don't know, Jessica talked to all of you all about the twice-a-year policy updates that we do. So the twice-a-year policy updates will be coming the middle of May. It includes that AI stuff. There's about 4 others that you all already have in the hopper that will not have updates. Many of those, though, were from the legislative session, so those bills hadn't even been passed when we sent you your original. So we just need to figure out how you want to handle those updates. If you want to just pop in the new stuff, because it'll be middle of May when we get that to you, and that will include AI.
So it will be its own policy.
No, it'll be part of that.
It will be part
Yeah,
of it.
it's A300, because essentially what we did was define AI as a form of technology and add it to really the family or community of all the different kinds of technology that need to be regulated.
And since this feeds into A301, it was your recommendation that we get these 2 passed by July?
Yes.
And that then we
possible.
can come back and revise as required in the
Yeah.
future?
Yeah,
None of these
and
are
that-
chiseled in stone.
Yeah, and A301, you're really getting, that is the cell phone prevention. You're getting that one early. That is one of the ones that we're sending out, but anybody who requests it, we're giving it to them early because folks are really understandably concerned about this and this change in the handbook. But the rest of them, as I said, you'll get in mid-May, including A300, but the only thing on A300 will be the AI stuff. So it's up to you of at what point you want to throw that in there and change it. But that doesn't carry any particular legal obligation. It's more of a best practice, so you're under a time crunch with A301 for your next year's student handbook, but you're not for the AI update.
Okay. would that be something that you might be able to put into A300 as you make those other changes that we talked about? And then
Yeah, if
That'd
you
be-
want the A300 so that you can hear it next time, that's
that'd be
just fine.
great. Yeah, that'd
Yeah,
be super. And
Because
we'll-
that one is ready.
bump
There are a few that aren't quite ready, but that one is ready because
Great.
it didn't come out of the legislative session.
Okay, yeah, Rachel.
Just one more comment. It's been said a few times during this meeting, and it was said during our work session, when people say, one student is reporting the bullying of another student, I think it's very important to use caution in that language, because what they're really recording is an interaction between two people or three people or whatever the situation is, but they're not in a role to pass judgment or determine the nature of that communication, whether it be an event or something that falls under the criteria of bullying. And so I just think we have to be careful when we sitting in a policymaking standpoint are classifying language in some way, because we're not the investigative body who's determining what that is.
I agree. Thank you very much. Okay. Not quite sure where to go from here. How about we do the first reading of A301? Could you give us the overview of that one?
Yeah, A301 is essentially the language that the legislators passed as the cell phone prohibition with definitions. The comments there have definitions that candidly we have created from just looking at different sources. So the definitions with the comments where it says the legislature didn't say that, it just seems best practice to have some sort of a definition. So we added one.
Okay. Sounds good. Does anyone have any questions about the wireless communication and device policy while we have Amy here?
When will, not on this one, but just when will this become public? We only saw this just this afternoon, so it's actually not been shared with the public in the packet.
Well, no,
So,
this is the first reading.
right,
So
which typically would already have been in the packet.
it got updated this afternoon.
Oh, good, on the
Because it was
website?
that new. And so it should be there,
Awesome.
but we can double check and make sure that 301
said
is.
She said it is, right?
It is. Okay, yeah, it's on. Perfect. Okay. Yes.
So I wonder, what's the practice?
This rule usually in the classroom. And I observed some classroom not in our district as a researcher. And some of the teachers basically collect all the cell phones at the beginning of the class. Some of them just ask the kids to put the cell phone in their backpack. So I wonder, so what's the implication of this for the school practice?
Well, it does say that as permitted by a teacher. So if the teacher is allowing the use of the cell phone, then that's permitted under the law.
Only for educational purposes, though. They can't say, in my classroom, it's okay to have.
Okay,
Oh,
so
I
it's still up to the individual teacher
Yeah, but
to
only
decide how.
if they're gonna use it for educational purposes. And now, most districts aren't doing that because you have other devices to use for educational purposes.
Right. As far as collecting them, I don't think I've ever heard of that happening with my students. Have you?
No, they'll probably, I'm guessing buildings will want to be somewhat consistent. But it could be as simple as keeping it in your backpack
Yeah, that seems
or
to
keeping
be,
it in the book bag or out of sight, out of mind, not on it, in other words.
the strictest teachers that my children have had have said it needs to be in your backpack and turned off all the time. And if you're caught with it making noise, then you're busted. So that, I think, would vary from room to room. And be part of each individual teacher's policies. Yes, Rachel.
And to be clear, there's a disciplinary course of action that's set up through the student handbook for this. So the policy doesn't need to indicate the discipline piece
Correct,
of
because
it.
that's the role of the student code of conduct.
Correct. So, and I may or may not know from personal experience, but that is worked through the discipline process correctly. They do a nice job of that.
Great. Okay.
Sorry, may I
go
ask
ahead.
one more?
Go ahead.
So regarding the definition for instructional time, I wonder whether the study hall is counted as instructional time? Because I heard a lot of students actually are using their cell phone, maybe for learning purposes or maybe for some other purposes. But I wonder whether we have any rule for that, because it can be out of control if we don't have a rule.
Is study hall generally considered instructional?
I think it would be, because this even includes, there was talk and language about passing period even being instructional time, because the goal is to get to your next class. So I don't see any way how a study hall would be any different, because it is a class period.
For me, it's under the direction of a teacher. I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
That's okay, it's fine.
It's that it's under direction of a teacher and there is a teacher in place in a study hall, and that would be
Yeah,
it's their job to manage the classroom
makes sense.
regardless of the content.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I just feel, it's good to have the clarification, so then that way the teachers or supervise the students during the study hall can use that policy to say, hey, cell phone is not allowed during study hall.
I think
Because
that was
with so
the-
many students, it'll be difficult to manage their cell phone use, and it's hard to tell whether you are using it for learning purpose or for some other purpose. Maybe if they use a learning purpose, they do it at home, not
Right.
during the study hall.
Right, I think the impetus behind the law and the legislature's reasoning for putting it in was because they wanted teachers to be empowered to say, hey, it's the law, there's nothing we can do
Yes.
about it, and that kind of
Yeah.
shifts the blame
Yeah.
to Indianapolis, which is
Yeah.
easier, so, yes, Stacia.
So if I'm reading this correctly, it says, it's talking about instructional time, and the teacher controls it, and we've talked about that, but then it says instructional time does not include lunch or recess. Does that mean we're kind of saying students can have a free-for-all K through 12 with their cell phones during lunch and recess?
Well, state law does not prohibit use during lunch and recess.
Okay. So legislation was saying during class time, no one's allowed to have their cell phones, but we don't care during lunch or recess,
That's-
is what
that's what
legislation
it
has
says, yeah.
said. And so then how are we handling in our school district lunch and recess?
Lunch and recess, I believe.
That'd be the
They
student
can, I think they can
handbook.
use them during lunch, for example.
Yeah.
Cell phones. Yes. And I'm talking high school from experience myself. So yeah, so yours are off all day. Yeah. And at the high school, when I said recess, I was thinking break, but yes, that they are permitted to use their cell phones.
So is that like in the handbook? Because I have had parents ask me this question actually before in some of the younger grades. So like, is it the handbook that says, and is the elementary school the same? Or do you know?
Actually, and it just stays in the backpack all day. We
Okay.
don't let them take it anywhere. They're the ones who want to report each other on the playground. Yeah, no cell phone.
So the two elementary schools handbook wise says it's not allowed, and the high school it's allowed, which is just where our school district stands, which is
Yes.
great.
So that is that policy 5136 that splits the policy, right? In our current policy, it splits it. So 5136 says no use K through 6, and then has a different policy 7 through 12. And I think that's the part I'm trying to understand, is this changes the state law, but it actually broadens the permissions K through 6 broader than we have had historically.
Yeah, so if you want to go further and restrict recess and lunch, you certainly can. This policy was just created to comply with the law, because otherwise you put it generally in handbooks.
So that's my question on 5136, is it deals specifically with personal communication devices, and it says K through 6. Sorry, I'm trying to read it. It is prohibited on school grounds during school hours, at after-school activities, and on school buses and other board-provided vehicles. So K through 6, it is just no phones.
Yeah, and you can put that language
We can
back
put
in
that
there.
language in if we would like it, yeah. And then 7 through 12 and 5136 deals with really what this policy that we're recommending looks like. I would be interested in seeing that as an addition.
Are you interested in saying no cell phones? A child cannot carry a cell phone to school in 6th grade?
That's what our current policy
Well,
is.
as a parent, I would tell you that I would be pretty disappointed in that, because that's when I had my children get them because of extracurricular. And for me, it was a safety measure of them being able to contact me and tell me it was time to pick them up.
I'm just telling you what our current policy says. So right now, there'd be no sixth graders with a phone at any point in time, according to our policy that's currently in place.
Okay.
And I think at the time we deferred to what the principals wanted. The principals came forward with that recommendation, and I would be interested in knowing what their recommendation would be on this. Because this policy that we've been presented is looser than the policy that we currently have with regard to cell phones.
So if you don't put it in the policy, I'm all for asking the principals, but if you don't put it in the policy, that doesn't mean it cannot be in the handbook.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Yeah, because where it says is, this refers to instructional time. It leaves everything else open.
For me, it would be important to have the principal's recommendation on what they want for their schools and their buildings. I just want to make sure everybody knows we're making it actually more allowed with this policy.
If you principals would like to email me with your recommendations or your feelings on that, that'd be great, and we can incorporate that as we get them. Okay?
And also, I mean, it brings up also the buses, which we haven't brought up that at all at the younger grades. I mean, I'm only talking about the younger grades, but like I said, kindergarten are allowed to be on their phone on the bus. You know, what is our school
According to the
corporation?
law, it's no, correct? Or
The
No,
law does not get
it
into the
doesn't get into the
bus
bus.
because it's instructional time.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's really more becomes, in most schools, a handbook matter.
Okay. Yes, we include the buses in your recommendation. If you could, that'd be great. Cool. Okay.
For policy or handbook?
Policy or handbook, yeah, because it
Yeah,
could be
and
handbook.
let us know where you want it as far as, yeah, okay. You bet. Does that cover everybody's concerns about 301, or do we need to get further into that? Okay. And that was everything we covered in the work session. We don't have any that we can vote on tonight, I don't believe, unless I'm mistaken. Does anyone?
Can we have a second vote on some that we went through first vote and approved last time?
Did we vote twice?
If we did a first reading last time, we would vote this time for a second reading and pass them.
We haven't gotten that far. Because we did have first readings on all the Bs, but we haven't discussed them in work session yet. So I don't think we can move forward at this point. Is that right? I think we need to give everybody a chance to talk about them first. So we may need to have a Saturday work session where we really grind out a whole bunch of these, because otherwise we're never going to get anywhere. But scheduling that's going to be a challenge in the spring. Okay. Anyone else have? Yes, Lawrence.
This is a general question, not the website, our policy website. Right now we have a new policy website. It's called the Policy Hub, right?
Okay.
Is that right?
I believe so. That was the new, we're switching away from board docs into a
Yeah.
new, yeah.
Right now it's so-called the Policy Hub, if I remember that correct.
I don't remember what it's called. What's your question?
Yeah, my question is we moved some Neola's policy to this new website, and then there's all citations have been removed. So I'm just wondering, can we have that list on the old policy? I understand the new policy will have the citations, but for the old policy, can we have that?
On the website, you want to have the old policies still listed? Is that
Yes, you list with the citations
because of the, I don't know.
before we repeal them.
Well, I don't think we've repealed, oh, we did repeal a couple last time.
And you're going to continue for a while, you're going to have a combination of the new policies and the old kind of lumped together, because you won't have deleted some of the old ones,
Right.
but you'll eventually get to the point where you will have nothing but the new ones.
And so the goal is to have a side-by-side, which I think is what Mr. Wong is questioning. So
Yes.
yes, there will be a side-by-side, and Mr. Hamilton and Mrs. Julian will work to state those are gone. On this side, the Neola side, these are repealed, and as it happens, the ones that apply to it, and then this is the new policy. So yes, Mr. Wong, that is the plan, to have that set up. And I believe that Mr. Hamilton has it set up, but it's not being released yet until the two of them get together here in the near future. And the ones that have been adopted, that's where that process will now begin.
According to my records, it's only 2.
Yes.
School wellness and civility and decorum, so.
And I think Mrs. Julian was predicting that there would be a few more this time, and then that'd be a point where that's side by side. It doesn't mean it still can't happen with just the 2 if we're just now going to end this meeting with just the 2 still. But that's kind of, they were waiting on that to get that set up and then work through the process a couple of times together. And then from there, Mrs. Julian will kind of take it because she'll have administrative access to it like she did with Neola in general. She'll be able to manipulate that so that those can be repealed as the new ones are being adopted.
Yeah, I understand that no problem. I just wondering, because right now we are trying to evaluate the new website instead of the board doc. We used to use the board doc, right? Right now it's our own website. So when we move those Neola old policies to the new policies called Policy Hub, if I remember correctly, and that old policy, only policy text in there, but there are no citations. Did that make it myself clear?
The Indiana code notations at the bottom of the policies are not present in the new version, but they are present in the old version is what he's saying.
Oh, I see.
Of
Sorry.
Neola?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we need to, I think that was an example, right? You're going to have our actual policies.
And they'll have,
It'll be the actual policy, so it'll be the citation. So if that's not the way it is right now, it must have just been set up as a model.
Oh, okay. Right now it's just kind of for evaluation purpose.
I suspect that I'll have to look, but yes, we'll need to take the board adopted Neola policies that are right now on board docs. And those will be on the side of Neola in the new setup. And then there'll be the newly adopted ones from Church Hiddle policies. And that's where that side by side that Mrs. Julian will work on, those citations will be there because it'll be our actual policy.
Yeah, and the other piece to keep in mind is those old ones will be preserved, and that's really important to do because you may later have litigation or an audit where you need to look at what was the policy on X date.
okay. So they're not disappearing.
You want to make sure you internally
Okay.
download them. and
We will
stuff.
not evaporate
Yeah.
the policies.
Yeah,
Got
I
it.
mean, at some point, they might, whenever your board doc ends, but you own those, so you can download them to your internal systems if you don't have other copies.
Got it.
Just something from a records preservation perspective, I want to make sure I throw in here early.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's what
Okay. I don't think we can go anywhere else with the policies, and I don't want to bring in the Cs or the next set of 10 for first reading until we've gotten further. I'd like to keep it where we have about 10 in front of us at a time, and right now we have 20, so we're just gonna.
So then the other question, the about 5 that you've taken care of, A300, we're going to incorporate that. But
Yep.
there are about 4 others that you have in the hopper but are going to have legislative updates. So
If I have a document that says where we're at with each individual one, and if we haven't talked about it yet, let's just pull the old
new
one
one, okay.
and throw the new one in, and then when we talk about it,
Okay.
we'll have the latest version.
yeah, that's fine. So just know that that'll be around mid-May. So you'll have probably 2, well, this is April, so you'll only have 1 more meeting before that anyway.
Yeah, and I don't expect we're gonna get there. And maybe in July, when we typically don't have this meeting, that might be a good time to try to do a Saturday where we pound out a whole bunch, since we'll have the newer versions. And then we can start the year with more finished, because we'll be able to vote on them in August. Yeah, okay, got it. We'll figure that out. Anyone have anything else about policies under the sun? Okay, let's talk about the foundation donation, Dr. Greiner. Oh, you logged out. Sorry.
My computer shut itself off. so
I know, I'm
apologize.
sorry.
It's right off my notes. So the West Lafayette School Education Foundation has communicated that $1.7 million can be gifted to the corporation given the project at the high school in which the funds were raised for initially has been completed and naming rights accordingly. And specifically, I'm referring to the Guy Academic Wing and the Kelly Performing Arts Wing. After seeking further clarification, the WLCSF has communicated that the funds can be transferred to the school corporation and without restriction. It's my recommendation that the board accept the funds to be placed in a construction fund for future projects.
Moved by Mr. Schott. Tom, seconded by Lawrence. I'm getting there. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Stacia?
I think this is just so incredible. I'm grateful for the foundation being willing to transfer this money over. With them not putting restrictions on us, can we just put it in an account and not restrict ourselves? Right now, if we put it in a construction only, we are restricting ourselves with a lot of unknowns, uncertainty to possible other needs of the money. So I guess I'm not understanding. Well, I guess my question is just, can we put it in an account without restricting it ourselves?
I think you could do that, but our recommendation is a construction fund because it originated from obligations related to construction. So we did find that we don't have to restrict it to, for example, the ground floor that we would still, of the high school, that we would still recommend that, but it's not restricted in case there's unknown. But to answer your question at face value, if the board decided that you want to take that recommendation and put it in an even not construction, yes. But as Mrs. Cronk and I discussed, we recommend it goes into a construction fund because that's where we would think it would make the most sense to use it. And we don't have a lot of funds for construction right now anyway. But with that, even, you're still not fully restricting yourself because you could make a resolution to move it if we got into a bind and the money hadn't been used. You wanted to move it into a different direction.
Just to clarify as well, most of our needs are in the maintenance operational realm, which can be spent out of a construction fund. So some of those things we talked about the other day, like resurfacing the tennis court or things like that, that can all come from a construction fund. Anything that's paid from those particular program codes that fall under construction would be able to come from that, which includes general maintenance, things like that. And that's really where most of our need lies because our operations fund is so limited.
Rachel?
I agree. I think that the work of the foundation is remarkable, and they've really done a phenomenal job of developing and are continuing to develop very intentionally. I think it makes sense to put it in kind of the drawer of construction and allow it to be determined out of there. In my recall, it's just a single vote by the board. Should you come to us and present a need to move it out for some reason? Is that true? That's just a one vote? You would bring it back to us and say?
It would just basically be a transfer resolution that I would bring.
Yeah. I think it makes sense, given the nature of the original donation, to keep it in a construction related fund. It's a good sorting to keep it from getting lost in other things.
Anything else?
Try to understand, clarify, like get my understanding correctly. So I appreciated their education foundations who have fundraising efforts, but if I understand correctly, so even we put that in as right now we can say these reserved for constructions, but later if something happened, we can still change the use of this amount, right? We still have the flexibility to change. Okay,
And honestly, I can't think of many things that would come up that we would need it for that don't involve construction or maintenance at this point that we can't cover with something else. So,
yeah, I think that makes sense. But just sometimes, when you think about, say, there's assessed values of apartment, those things, the model, they have changed. So maybe we'll have some lost revenues, and there are some curriculum materials, maybe there are some shortfalls. And maybe we use that money for something pumped out for the Happy Hollows. There's some uncertainties. So if we have the flexibilities, that would be great. So
yeah. The important thing with this is that if we put it in a construction fund, I can then turn around and invest the money in that particular fund so I can grow it even more until we actually need it. So,
okay, gotcha.
because we've been getting some really good interest rates. So.
Sure, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, all those in favor of gratefully receiving this donation, please indicate with raised hand. It is 6-0. Great. And now we will move on to the related issue of Foundation fundraising.
Yeah, so it is related to the issue. We did break this out to a separate item. As previously stated in Friday notes, we do believe that the ground floor of the junior senior high school is a priority. WLCSF has expressed interest in beginning to fundraise for the ground floor specifically because they believe they have a lot of people that would like to donate for those purposes. In order to do so, the WLCSF Executive Board actually needs guidance and permission from the West Lafayette School Board to do so. We recommend the board approve WLCSF to begin fundraising efforts for the ground floor work at the high school, knowing that the renovation is a priority. And then, obviously, we wouldn't do any projects until we would have the money available for any projects at that time. So,
Okay, I need a motion, please.
Can somebody move?
Moved by Lauren, seconded by Rachel. Any comments? Yes, Rachel.
I'm gonna ask a question. I'm assuming, but I just want to make sure it's clear that if they specifically fundraise for that project, any funds that they receive would be restricted to that project.
I believe they did say they would raise in general for the ground floor, so it could be used for anything on the ground floor.
Any of the
yes. And it would be
phases
restricted to the
along.
ground
Okay,
floor. Yes.
thank you for that clarification.
And how does it work? So if we get information from the city in a few months about preschools and we decide to move forward with Happy Hollow, do we then also go to the foundation and say, we're also looking at doing construction on Happy Hollow. Will you help us to fundraise for that? And then we vote on that. How does that work as we determine other projects, that if I understand correctly, that is also a priority?
Yes, we could go to the foundation and ask for other projects for fundraising or other opportunities of fundraising that could support our students. So the second part of the question where you sort of answered it is correct. You could do that.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but in all of these discussions, it was brought up that they believe that they do have people that want to donate specifically for the ground floor. So that's where this discussion kind of started.
And there may be the same thing for preschool too. So the point is, from the foundation's perspective, and correct me, we've got a member of the board on it, but the key for them is if we're going to ask, if they're going to raise money, they want the school corporation, school board to define what it is they're raising it for. So we're requesting that of them.
Okay, and then I had another question. It came up in regards to this. If I understood correctly, the naming rights that would tie into fundraising was brought up in regards to the foundation. And old policies and the way it was handled, was also brought up. So I guess my question is, if they're looking at fundraising soon, and this is coming forward that they said we need to make a decision as a board, can we prioritize the policy on naming rights sooner than later? Because at least that's what I understood the foundation was saying they needed direction on. But
Possibly yes, I see Amy saying that we can prioritize that one, but also the foundation, I know, and Mr. Schott speak to this if I say it incorrectly, but the foundation's been working on their own approach to naming rights because they've even had a speaker from another foundation, corporation's foundation, on how they can maybe not make it a permanent naming right, but a period of naming right, which then opens up for additional opportunities to fundraise in the future, the WLCSF on behalf of our school corporation for us. So that they're working on that as a board. Yes. Okay.
okay, because I mean, my understanding was they had said the school retains the right to name its facilities, that they're not involved in it. So I would love a future conversation. I don't know if it's an agenda item, involves a new policy, just to understand from what the foundation was saying and what I'm understanding.
I
Clear.
think from what I understand, Tom, I believe that the foundation will probably have something to bring to us at some point on that,
Exactly.
right?
And they're still researching.
Yeah.
As Dr. Reiner said, they looked at some other districts.
Well, and if the policy goes hand in hand when we send it, you can give it to your foundation folks as well.
Sounds great.
All right, all those in favor of humbly requesting that the foundation help us fundraise, please show your hands. And that is 6-0, Mrs. Julian Roberta. Okay, now, how about an update on the preschool pilot? Dr. Greiner. Mr. Shaw.
And your
I'll get
computer
there.
wants to sleep again.
Yes, it goes.
I'm going to be so inconsistent with names for like 6 months, and then we'll get there.
Sean, Dr. Griner, it's all fine with me.
Except Sean.
So as you are aware, a preschool study and consideration of the pilot for the preschool is a board priority, and the board determined that to be a priority during our board retreat this past summer. We also know that early childcare and preschool continue to be a community need. And you're aware that we are partnering with the city to better understand this through a study that is currently in process. And West Lafayette is looking to better understand the need for preschool childcare services, even beyond the district lines. So all of West Lafayette, because we know that we serve much of West Lafayette, and then TSC serves a portion of West Lafayette. And for that reason, TSC and West Lafayette schools worked collaboratively with the city to help determine the study. And then we're waiting on those results, which should come sometime in May. It's no secret that West Lafayette Community Schools is very interested in being a solid partner with the city. Students come to kindergarten with learning gaps and varying needs. Our part in a preschool as preschool services can allow our own people to determine services that can close those gaps and have students enter our schools in kindergarten more consistently so that students are ready to hit the ground rolling. So with that, we would like to start a pilot program that will help us develop a solid program, also meet some childcare needs early on right now, and then create a program that can be further expanded once we have a better understanding of the overall needs. You have a proposal in your exhibit in your packet. At this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Roth to share just some key points of that proposal, and we will bring this back to the board for vote in May.
So we met with the elementary staff to kind of give them, because Mrs. Delaney had indicated she would be very interested in hosting this in her building for obvious reasons, and she thought her teachers would be interested as well. So we spoke first with the elementary staff to kind of give them an update. As Dr. Griner explained, there is a community need. This is something that has been discussed in our community predating any of us. And so we thought now was a good time, with the interest of the city of West Lafayette, to pursue things, and also the interest overall in the need, that a pilot could be a good direction to go at the elementary school. So as I said, we spoke with the elementary school staff in an optional meeting, and we explained this would be for the 24-25 school year. We would be looking to have a minimum of 16 children, a maximum of 18. That ratio is within the guidelines. If we've got a lead teacher and a paraprofessional in there, those ratios are within the guidelines of eventually obtaining pathway to quality after we've been open a year. We would open registration as soon as we could, because we realized there are some families who would have already registered. We saw this as a good way to recruit and retain staff as well. So for the pilot, we had discussed opening it up first to our staff. And that way that's a service to them, and they don't have to do that. But if they wanted to, we thought that would be a service to them. It would follow a standard preschool day, and it would also follow the standard school year. That's something we're accustomed to, so that's a place to start where we're familiar with that. The preschool day would be 8 a.m. to 3 roughly, and that's of course changeable depending on drop off and pickup. And we would want to offer before and after care as well that would be strictly limited to preschool. So it would be separate from any before or after care we already have in place. It would be children who are, what we're looking at is less than 5 as of August 1st, because those children would be kindergarten aged. But we also recognize that there may be some children who wouldn't be exactly 4. So we would want children who would be turning 4 by the end of 2024, December 31st. Children not already qualified for or served by the Glass Cooperative Preschool Program, recognizing that those children who would need a developmental preschool whose needs would best be served in that program. We were asked about a potty policy. We would advocate for a potty policy. And then, as I said before, looking at doing the children of staff, and then looking after that, if we still needed numbers to get to the number to staff it correctly, we would look at the children living in our own school district and then open that beyond. So we would have a lead preschool instructor and preschool paraprofessionals. And we've all three worked in school districts before where we've had preschools. So we've borrowed some job descriptions and whatnot from that. So we're on that track already. And as I said, we would want to keep the ratio to satisfy pathways to quality because we would want to seek that. The Purdue Early Learning Matters curriculum, we're excited about this because we do have some folks in our community who have said they're more than willing to help us support. And the Early Learning Matters curriculum was also recently approved by the Indiana Department of Education as a high-quality preschool curriculum. That curriculum, if you've looked at it, it's a 3 to 5 grade band, not 3 to 5 age range band, and it includes activities and assessments and everything that's needed. So we would want to use that, especially since it gives us more of an opportunity to partner with Purdue. Mrs. Delaney would be the person who would oversee that program along with her assistant principal and anyone else she needs to. And we've all three been in buildings where the principal oversees it, and that goes well because it gives the preschool community a chance to become a part of the K-3 community in this case. Gives kindergarten, if there's hopefully throughout the year, we would want kindergarten teachers to have the chance to interact with the preschool teachers and the kindergarten children to understand what was coming up. So we talked about that. We would want to keep the tuition at near the market rate. And from what we've understood, keeping tuition at that market rate prevents the market from being artificially suppressed. What you end up with in a lot of times is preschool where there are home preschools that maybe aren't licensed that charge a significantly lesser rate. They don't qualify for the vouchers, but then it creates this divide between what the state considers high quality preschool and preschool that can't be measured in any way, shape, or form, or doesn't have any sort of accreditation, if you would. That paths to quality would be important. We've already started the conversation to talk about meals and whatnot. Students who would otherwise qualify for free or reduced lunch could also qualify. And then, as I said before, the aftercare would be tuition-based as well, recognizing that some parents may not need before care or aftercare, but that preschool would still be available. We do believe we'd still have time to hire for June and July to be ready in August. And Mrs. Delaney has been working on a space that she thinks would work and we could transition some the essential skills room to Willis. And Mrs. Saros is working on a space for that to work as well. And that would give one program one less, adding one in. So that would kind of distribute that a little bit more. Above all, we thought the pilot year would give us a year of gaining understanding, especially if the city is willing to partner with us in some way, shape, or form. I don't know that anything would start as soon as what the city would, I'm assuming their timeline would be greater, but it would give us a chance to try one classroom, get our toes in the water to better understand, start to partner with those at Purdue who are interested in partnering with us and start to provide a gap, start to fill a gap where there's a need in the community. So our goal long-term would be to become On My Way pre-K certified, to become Paths to Quality certified so that children who would need vouchers would qualify for vouchers. And then also we know long-term that if you are high quality through that currently considered Paths to Quality, that we could qualify for grant funding at some point. Just this past year there was the through FSSA, there was the employer-sponsored childcare fund, where employers could qualify to get a grant basically to provide childcare to their employees. But then also recently there have been a variety of grants across Indiana focused on early learning. So that is in a nutshell what we explained to the elementary school staff, and they were, I think, pretty eager and had questions. And I think those who had early learning experience were, came up afterwards and said, we'd love to be a part of it. Please, we've got the knowledge, we want to contribute.
Super. This is really exciting because we've been talking about this for as long as I can remember. So great work getting things moving, all of you. Rachel.
I have so many questions. And I think you probably know the answer to them. This is, I agree with Amy, excitingly, when we had to pause it last year, this time, that was a really hard decision. So I appreciate that you brought it back. My first question in here is related to the glass identified students. This specifies that they're not already qualified or served by glass. I would gather that some of these students may be identified or at least start to be watched through this program. That would not, if they did receive an identification, that wouldn't mean they were booted from the program, or would it be a case by case?
That would be something that a case conference would, obviously, when you hold that case conference, you're looking at, is the continuity best? Is there a developmental issue where glass could best serve that? Having been in school districts with preschools before, it wasn't a problem for speech services to happen at the preschool. Most parents were comfortable with that. So it would really be, I think, a case by case of what would be best for that particular child.
On the nature of it, okay.
Yeah.
But there's not going to be a hard and fast, you've got glass, you're out the door rule.
I don't think we anticipated anything like that.
Yeah,
We wouldn't
I
want-
don't feel
yeah.
like that would be.
We wouldn't want to deny anybody
you.
based upon their
Okay.
status of disability.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned dining and food service. That brought to mind crowded lunchroom, compressed times.
This was a question that did come up. We had
Yeah.
talked about already having the students eat in their room because we didn't want it to be, we didn't want it to be that crowded issue. And we also, that preschool room kind of becomes that little kingdom haven for those preschool students, if you will.
And Courtney has actually had experience working with preschool and feeding preschool children as well in her former position. So,
And doing some research right now.
and she's doing research right now.
I love it. That brought me to other shared resources, playgrounds, media center, all those things. Did that feel like that could be done safely, given the age gap between, say, a third grader and a 3 or 4-year-old?
We can just, all the teachers have the same question. So we're looking at, since we do have our kindergarten playground, right? It's not your kindergarten anymore, it's a smaller playground. That would just be a scheduled time when they could get to use that space. And the same thing, they would not be going to the special area classes, like art, music, those sort of things. That's all self-contained. But we do need to talk with our media specialist about if they can show books.
Yeah.
And that might be something where even if she brings a carton of books for them to look through. Just something that we were toying around with was, towards the end of their preschool year, that would be fun for them to get to transition and visit some of these places, go visit the cafeteria, that they maybe are shining tears for kindergarten. So I can teach everyone else.
I love that. That's awesome. My other question is school nurse. Does school nurse have capacity to deal with emergencies at a preschool?
Yeah.
Since we would be swapping out our essential skills, I think that does free up some of her time.
Are the vaccination guidelines going to be adjusted for these students? There's different start to school, so pre-kindergarten vaccinations as opposed to 3-year-olds are just different.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then finally, I didn't get a chance to look at that, but does this preschool contain an assessment model?
The Early Learning Matters curriculum has assessments built into it.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Just for today, I know you'll
I probably will.
have station.
So when you're talking about charging the market rate, just for this pilot program, just this year we're looking at, is that going to make money for the school district? Are we going to lose money? Is it cost neutral? What is this going to look like financially for our school district?
The goal, and I'm going to let Michelle jump in, but I'm going to say simply, our goal is to make it cost neutral because we realize K through 12 funds come from a very specific place, and we want this program long-term to be self-sustainable and self-funded.
And also knowing that we may have to buy a piece of playground equipment, buy some supplies and things like that. We have to take all of that in consideration. So we're currently looking at those financial models right now to do that final determination of what that will look like.
Okay, but something, I don't want to be making money off of our staff's children, so I like the thought of being cost neutral and not, providing that service. In looking at the priorities, I love that staff is our highest priority. And I don't even know how it works. What about the vouchers or scholarships that's available, like the Pass to Quality vouchers for students that who really need this preschool to help us with kindergarten? Is there a way to prioritize them after staff or?
Go ahead.
I was just going to, Well, you're probably going to say this.
For this year, we couldn't accept vouchers, so that would have to be long-term, because we would have to be PTQ certified to qualify for On My Way Pre-K, and you have to have at least that year of being in operation. That's part of the reason, too, we're eager to try it, because that year of operation then sets us on that path to quality pursuit.
So if we wanted to have any students participate that need preschool to help them get ready for kindergarten, at this point, it would need to come out of our pocket. There's no other financial resources we know to allow them to participate this next year.
Not that would be through FSSA, through the,
Not until we're PTQ.
That's why
Yeah.
we want to get that year in, that pilot year, because we'll also be focusing on becoming,
Then we
yeah,
can.
paths to
Like
quality.
if we did it this year, next year we could.
Yes.
if we meet the
Certification,
certification.
we could prioritize
Yeah.
that and meet those needs. And then what is the capacity at the elementary school room-wise? How many rooms do they have available to be putting, we don't know exactly what numbers will look like. If we got an influx in enrollment and need a new kindergarten classroom, second grade classroom, what's our room capacity at the elementary school?
2 additional with minimal creativity, and even 3 or 4 more with really being creative on the spaces and looking at those spaces and how to use those most efficiently. Right now, we're in luxury mode where there are, so there is capacity there at 2, maybe 4.
And that is outside of this, because Essential Skills moving opens that class,
Exactly.
opens a classroom
So
for.
not counting this preschool, we still have 2 to 4 rooms that can become classrooms at any point.
We could sit down with the principal and work through that, yes. Mhm.
If we had to take an additional 2, we're removing programs and shutting them.
That's what my question was. 2 is not, this summer if something came up, we do have 2 more rooms, not counting the
Yes.
preschool.
2 would be the easy.
The
Yeah, the
easy,
easy.
no changes.
Yeah.
What about at the intermediate school? We're now adding the essentials program. How many rooms do we have sitting available?
We have some in each room. It's great still.
Great. Helpful. Thank you. Rachel.
Sorry, I guess I have one more thing to say. My student who's now a 10th grader participated in a preschool program when it was Cumberland, and it was remarkable. It was remarkable. It was a glass preschool, but it was remarkable, and I'm so thrilled that we might have the option to bring that back. Because I think it was it was a game changer for a lot of families to utilize that space and be so close.
Thank you. So our goal then is to bring that back to you in May. And then if we get board approval, we're going to very quickly go into the mode of registration, and we're
Ordering,
going to be
setting
doing
up.
some postings and so forth. So we appreciate these questions. Shopping.
Hi, little shit.
Yes.
Yeah, just the last, yeah, pretty much they already asked the question I'm trying to ask. So I just really appreciate the school administrations and also Delaney take the ownership and how these things. The only question I have is, there are 2 questions. One is the path to quality. So we have to have first 1 year in the business, and then we can apply for this, the level 4, maybe we target that.
We work through the process throughout the year. And we get a coach even, right? Not a coach.
Well, they will assign you. I do think, and I can look it up, I do think we have to be open for a year, and then we can start to pursue it. The nice thing about being in an elementary school is that there are many things, safety measures and whatnot, that are already in place. So it makes it an easier pursuit, and they assign you someone who kind of walks you through the entire process.
Another question, I think this program is very good for keep our teachers. And in case we want to extend these programs in next year, we get everything very good, a long waiting list. And in that case, do we have rooms in our elementary school to extend maybe another class or something?
We do have a couple of additional rooms that would take minimal creativity, and we have a couple of rooms beyond that we would really sit down with the principal and make sure that we're prioritizing specific spaces. And then there's more room in the intermediate school as well.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. There's a lot of detail need to be take care, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take a look at, oh, sure, go ahead, you answer.
Yeah, I agree. It's really exciting. And I have so questions about numbers. So what do we have an estimation about how many children of staff might be interested in this pilot?
That's the next step. So one of our next steps is to meet with the staff optional meeting at the intermediate to kind of help them understand, you know, what questions would you have about an essential skills room coming to your building? And then another step that we have on the list before we get to that May meeting is to just send out a short survey to staff to ask what would be your interest, what would be the need.
And how big is the essential skill room? Like the capacity of the room? How many kids can be put
What
in?
we
Little
would,
kids,
three
you can
right now.
stack them.
what?
How many are in essential schools? 4. There are 4 in essential schools right now.
Oh, for essential?
Yes.
In
4
essential
students.
skills classroom
Yes.
Oh,
for the
Yes.
students.
4 students.
I think depending on the student need, space-wise, they're saying that typically go up to 10, that's what's seen in other schools, but so much of it depends on what the needs are of the students.
okay. And another question I have is who are using the essential skill rooms? And if is there extra rooms in Willis, and why do we move the essential skill room to Willis? And
I would say they're not extra rooms, there are people in them, there are programs in them. If they're interventionists, there's 2 or 3 interventionists in one room, they would leave their room in order for us to move the classroom. They would be mobile. So it's not that we have empty rooms just sitting. There are things, it's not like I would be taking away a preschool full class of students, but we would just reorganize the adults. So none of it is empty space, sadly.
okay, so then if we move the essential skill room to Willis, I wonder, yeah, again, who are using them, and how about the transportation? And if the students are using them in Willis, are using essential skill rooms?
Like the ages?
Yeah, the room will be moved, the current room will move from Willis to Willis, right? Is that what I heard?
Correct.
And so my question is, who are using that room right now? And will that, so because of this pilot preschool and the essential skill room will be moved to your building, right? So my question is, who are currently using that essential skill room?
We have some classrooms that, like Sarah, have some adults that are using those spaces for pull-out, but we also have some extra classrooms. When Willis was built, it was built to be 10 sections of 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and we currently have 8 of every grade level. So some of those classroom spaces that are not used currently for classrooms are available that we can use that for.
Yeah, I understand. So my question is, yeah, I understand you have space to make them become essential skill rooms, right? So, but my question is, who are currently using them in the Willis, the elementary school? And so then, does that mean those people need to go to Willis instead?
Are you worried about the age of
No, I
the
think she's
student?
staff.
No.
What staff would go?
Who would be moved?
Yeah.
Okay.
So are the students using the room
I
currently?
think
or
you're still
staff?
determining where that room would go. Is that correct?
So we do have a room in mind, but if I understand right, I think you're asking about the staff that are at the elementary and if they are coming to Willis with the essential skills.
Right.
program.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm just, I don't know who are using the essential skill room.
Essential skills is, it's a special education self-contained classroom.
Yes.
So that comes with 1 teacher of record and 2 paraprofessionals, so the 3 adults. And then currently there's 4 students, but there could be 7 kids moving in or out. All of them will go from our room and they will just go to the new room at the intermediate school. And the students that are in there are ages from K through 6 already.
Oh, so
Yeah.
they are mixed grades. They are not necessarily students at the elementary school age.
Correct.
Yeah, that's my
They
confusion.
stay self-contained.
Okay, so it doesn't matter whether they go to your school
Right.
or your school.
Correct.
Okay.
We share that program. So
Okay,
if we have a fifth grader that would need it currently, they would be.
okay, okay, yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay, everybody good? That was, yes, Lawrence.
Last question regarding the enrollment. I'm just thinking about some extreme case. In case we have 30 faculty staff members have one kid in that they want to enroll in his program, are we going to have a lottery or something?
Yeah, we would.
We'll
We
have
would do a lottery. Because if we do first come, first serve, it may be who read their email first and responded first. So we would probably put a cap, a date, let us know by, and then we would have to do a lottery.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next is another info item for the finance update.
Yeah. Okay, so an object breakdown is included in your board packets for expenses during the period of March 5th through April 3rd. I have also included 2 fund reports for you this month. I'm kind of changing it up a little bit because I think this is a little bit more relevant for you. The first is the month-end final fund report for February after all revenue and expenses have posted and the bank has been reconciled. So that month is completely closed at this time, so those are relevant numbers to show you. The school corporation ended the month of February with $19,946,606.70 in all funds and $4,940,957.46 in the education fund. I've also included the preliminary fund report for March as normal, but like I said, February is a little bit more relevant, so I'm starting to include that now because March, we're still in the process of posting revenue and some expenses and reconciling that month. So that's why you're getting 2 now, okay? You may remember that I mentioned at the last board meeting that our State Board of Accounts biennial audit, I said it right this time, for the period of July 1st, 2020, I haven't been able to say that word all day today, so July 1st, 2021 through June 30, 2023 has been completed. We are now able to share information publicly about the audit as the State Board has published their final reports. Those final reports are available on the Indiana State Board of Accounts website. We're happy to report there were no findings in the financial portion of the audit. Many might be confused that the audit indicates an adverse opinion with regards to GAAP reporting. This is because public school corporations in the state of Indiana practice cash basis accounting and not accrual accounting that's under GAAP. Thus, the auditors must indicate this statement on all audit reports, and you will see that on pretty much every single public school corporation audit report. The federal audit resulted in 2 findings and internal controls on federal programs. The first federal finding was due to the special education program, which is managed by the Greater Lafayette Area Special Services at Lafayette School Corporation. Due to West Lafayette Schools being a member of GLASS, if their program receives a finding, it is also included on our audit report, as they are the LEA. GLASS has already corrected the issue with the special education federal program with this school year. We work closely with Lafayette School Corporation and the director of GLASS to ensure that internal controls are followed going forward. We do meet every so often to discuss those things. The second finding was from a grant awarded to the Wabash Valley Education Center, in that sub-grantees were not being monitored by them. The director of WEVEC wrote the corrective action plan that was included in the audit report and has put a monitoring process in place for federal grants going forward. We will be working more closely with WEVEC to strengthen their internal controls in their program, as well as requesting all documentation with regards to grants to ensure that sub-grantee monitoring is taking place as outlined. Lastly, I want to thank everyone that's participated in the retirement information sessions we have held over the past few months. Our last information session of the year will be held the evening of April 16th next week, and representatives from VALIC will be presenting on retirement planning at that session.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Michelle? Yes.
I just want to thank you for the work on the retirement sessions, the feedback, and I'll talk about it in board teacher discussion notes, but the feedback from staff on it has just been so overwhelmingly positive towards you and all of your assistants, helping them plan for their future. So thank you very much.
More information, the better.
More information, the better.
And also great job on the audit. Those are stressful and difficult, and you nailed it. So well done.
The state board people that were here this year, they actually, it was the smoothest process that I've been through. They're wonderful people, very helpful, yeah.
But you're a wonderful team, so take her.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, next is, Lawrence, yes, sorry.
Just a quick comment. I really appreciate Michelle for working for the financial systems. This year, pretty much we just kind of no fundings. There are some, my understanding, 2 funding we already have that fix in place before because that's history things. So I really appreciate Ms. Cronk and all our teams to work on our financial things. It's make us very happy and very comfortable because we take care of the public fund. We have expertise here. So
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank
We
you.
have a great team here, so
Thank you. And I joined Michelle's financial, there are some trainings, professional development team meetings in the whole Indiana state. And I can tell Michelle is kind of well respected among her peers. And when somehow some difficult situation, they ask Michelle's suggestions or questions, and it seems her word carry weight. So I really appreciate we have good CFOs here.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to information to the board, number 6. That's me, and I would like to share that I am waiting to hear back from the Indiana School Board Association on whether or not the individual who I've identified to come help work through some of our stuff is available on the date and time that we are available, and I'll let you know as soon as I hear from them. I also will just go right into my board report. I had a great time judging the Rube Goldberg contest at Purdue this weekend. Students came from all over the world to compete. One team was one person who came all the way from China, which I could not believe. He brought his whole machine. And I highly recommend that everyone go to YouTube and look for Zach's Contraptions. And he live streamed the whole event. The Wonderland team, which includes several of our West Lafayette students, starts at 2 hours and 19 minutes into this video. There's a lot of blank space, so don't just sit and watch the whole thing. So you want to fast forward to 2:19, and then everyone should go to the very end at 5 hours and 52 minutes and look at Purdue's presentation, because they won the grand prize. It was amazing. I've never seen anything like it. So I appreciate Wonderland giving me the opportunity to do that. Also on Saturday morning, I enjoyed the ISMA contest. I'd like to congratulate our junior high choirs on receiving 3 golds, and both the mixed chorus and the girls choir received gold with distinction, which is the highest award. Mr. Bennett and Mrs. Letcher did a wonderful job of preparing our kids and making the choirs look both polished and professional, in addition to sounding beautiful, which anyone with a middle schooler knows is a big job. So great work to all of them and to all the kids. And I still have my golds from when I was in school. Finally, the baseball team started, as soon as I left the game, they started to win their first home game of the year against Delphi. We were down 3-13, and I had to go take my son to an event. And in my absence, they came back and won 14-13 in the 8th inning. So way to go. And I know I'm jinxy, which is why I will leave the room if Purdue starts to lose tonight. I won't even speak it into existence. So with that, Mr. Marley is where we all wish we were at the championship game. So Tom, would you like to give your report?
WLCF, just 2 reminders. The 2024 Wall of Pride festivities are Thursday and Friday. It's April 11th and 12th. Always inspiring. Scarlet and Gray Dinner and Auction, April 19th. Again, WLCSC.org for more information and to purchase tickets. And Community Council, next meeting is April 22nd.
Great. Yui. We can come back to you.
Yes, that's okay. I
Okay,
just
sorry.
found my notes for this. And as Mr. David Kusik said, Lawrence and I attended the zoning meeting, and one Airbnb conversion request from our school district was made, and many residents actually spoke to oppose the request. This request was declined with a 3 versus 2 vote. However, 3 didn't reach the quorum, so the case actually will come back later this month. And also the city passed the resolution, which is great. And I spoke at the zone meeting, but just like the previous 2 times when I spoke at the zone meeting, I only said that I'm a resident in West Lafayette, so I didn't say I represent the school board. because I communicated with you and said I should represent as a resident representative, not a school board. However, this time I read the conclusion paragraph of our resolution, and I also kind of briefly mentioned some data and that I learned and from the realtor and from our meetings. I agree with Mr. David Kusik that it would be helpful for us to appoint a board representative to speak at the future meetings and bring data from our district to support our opposition of the Airbnb conversion. That's for the Airbnb. I also organize information session for school board election and invited Mr. Mike Smith from the election office, and the meeting will be for this Saturday from 9:30 to 11 at the Fresh Time Community Room. And so it's open to the whole county, I would say, whoever might be interested in the school board election, which is coming soon, and welcome, and the board members here are welcome to join that too. Thanks.
Just to be clear, the reason I asked you to go as yourself as a resident and not as a representative of the board is because we haven't been invited to have official board representation at that meeting. And I didn't want to go into that sort of situation at a last minute without giving it careful consideration and allowing everyone to weigh in. So it wasn't that I didn't want you to represent the board. I just wanted to make sure that we've been formally asked to do that. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you went.
Yeah, I understand. Actually, that's why I suggested that we appoint somebody to do so. Also, if we appoint somebody to do so, whatever that person speak should be reviewed by the whole board, and so we agree on that. But I do see that like city council members and spoke, and even the mayor, I forgot, anyway, at one of the meetings, a couple of the office of elected officials spoke at those meetings. Okay. And so I think it'll be helpful. And I also believe that we should tell them our stand on this issue, because it really is very impactful. And based on my observation, actually, sometimes it doesn't matter what people say. And if they decided to vote to support the request, they will do it anyway. And at least the last time, not at the past 2 times ago, anyway. And we saw a very weak case, but they passed it anyway. And it's very disappointing. And I also actually taking this opportunity, I would like to express my gratitude to West Lafayette residents. They organized the group to speak every time at those meetings, and many times actually not necessarily in their own neighborhoods. They don't just watch back their own backyard. They are watching for us, for the whole district. And some of them, for example, Mr. David Kusik, and even bought T-shirts and signs and for people to use. I really appreciate their selfless contribution to ours. Thanks.
Rachel.
Sure. Thank you, Amy. First of all, I'm glad that you raised the issue of Mike Smith from the local election board. He obviously has ability to support any prospective candidates on our, from an election standpoint. An excellent comprehensive research for anyone considering a run is through the Indiana School Boards Association. That is isba-ind.org. They have really a comprehensive slate of information available on their website, including 2024 election procedures, a school board candidate guide, school board candidate FAQ, board and superintendent roles and responsibilities, as well as 4 free options for a Candidate 101 virtual webinar. Those are held free of charge May the 9th, May the 14th, May the 22nd, and June the 13th. For anyone who is interested in running for the school board, I cannot highly enough recommend these professional resources. You'll get a very dimensional view of what that candidacy and role looks like. Also, the WLEA board teacher discussion happened on Thursday, March the 21st. In that, and this happens every year, the staff representation brought up the question of evaluation, so the teacher evaluation update. And that feedback from both the administrators and the teachers present was very positive. I could sum it up with one great phrase is, "This is so much better than other schools," that came from our staff, and really applauded our principals and administrators in the buildings for doing a great job and having it be a very collaborative environment for teacher success. In addition, the administrators and the WLEA representatives opened the floor up for any collaborative conversation about ways that the process could be improved. So that was really good to hear and listen to that collaboration. And then also an agenda item was to talk about what bullying is and what it's not, talk about some definitions, we reviewed the policies and talked about Indiana law, and also discussed a common systems for reporting that our administrators have been working on putting together. So another great conversation at the WLEA discussion. And then finally, I'd like to kind of give a shout out to our high school counseling team. Those of you who don't have high school seniors this year might not be aware, but there's been some interesting happenings with the processing of the FAFSA and the change over to the new program. And it's made it extremely difficult for students who are graduating this year to have any idea of what aid, need-based aid versus merit-based aid versus scholarships, because schools are not awarding any of that to students right now. So our guidance office has really done a nice proactive job at communicating and encouraging parents on those issues and kind of answering questions. So I really appreciate their knowledge and professionalism in those things.
I agree. It's been a very stressful year to have my very first senior, and I'm really grateful too. So
Not a
thanks
good
for bringing
time,
that up.
but yeah. They've really been great advocates for our students in many ways, so I'm really grateful for them.
Me too. Thanks. Lawrence.
Regarding the park board, they the farmer market will open May 1st. So that's the first market for this year's season. And the Tapawego Park and the Wabash Heritage Trail, they will be closed from the mid-April to end of May because the Duke Energy do some upgrade of their power grid, and they also have a playground under their power lines, kind of their easement of their power line. So they will be relocated to another place next to that place, and then they pay the money for relocated that playground. So that's something will happen in next couple months. By the end of the year, they will finish that. And the Riverside Skating Center have very good seasons. They have over 10,000 admissions, almost 400 licenses delivered, 2 clinicals for 39 kids, and over 400 players for the adult hockey. So that's good. And one thing, their wellness center still continue seeking instructors to teach dance, music, acting, that kind of thing for the fall and the winter programs. And the last thing is the park board president Dr. David Perora, he showed some interest in continue working with all the stakeholders in our community to eliminate any waiting list because there are still some waiting list on the after-school program and also the summer camp. So he's kind of show interest to work with all the local peoples and try to eliminate that waiting list. So, so that's all. If you have anything for the park, I can forward whatever comments or suggestions to them. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Daisha.
The Public Schools Foundation meets tomorrow, so I don't have any updates.
Okay. Super. We'll look forward to hear what's going on with them. Amy, you got anything? I want you to feel left out.
Thank you for your patience as I was in eclipse traffic. I saw a lot of wonderful Illinois and Wisconsin license plates.
Should be a lot easier on the way home.
Yeah, boiler up.
Appreciate you being here. Our future meetings, work session will be, I'm sorry, oh golly, yeah, hi, you're here too.
Usually she starts to leave, but she made me go last, but she wasn't going to let me report. I'll make it quick. I just wanted to, one thing I want to do is thank you, Mrs. Austin, because I was actually, she didn't tell on me, but I was supposed to judge for Rube Goldberg, and I was actually really excited about it because it was going to be the first time I've ever done that. But I got into a bind. I almost panicked because we found out it was senior day for track and field at Wabash, and my oldest is a senior. So I called her and said, I'm in trouble. I'm not going to get to go to my son's track meet. He's upset, but he's not showing he's upset. She said, I'll go judge. I said, you're kidding me. So she did. So I'm thanking you, and I look forward to doing that in the future. But it freed up an opportunity then for me to go and visit robotics, because all weekend the robotics team was competing. And so I grabbed Michelle and we went together, and our goal was to spend an hour because she had somewhere to go and I was going to head down to Crawfordsville. And we ended up staying over 2 hours because we went down into the, what do they call it? The cockpit? The pit, that's right. Not the cockpit, the pit, yes. We went down to the pit, and the students talked all about their robot and how they put it together and what it was going to do. And so we were really ready to go out and watch them compete, and we saw it, and it was amazing. And they had a lot of success, so much I don't want to leave something out. I would invite you to go either to my X, formerly known as Twitter, or to the corporations, or to the corporation's Facebook, and you'll see the success that they had. But they know their stuff. They speak well. You just could listen to them forever. And we had a great time. And finally, we peeled ourselves away so that we could go do the rest of our day's activities. But we got some neat kids involved in that robotics, I'll tell you that. And then finally, I just want to give an update on the strategic planning and consideration for consultative services. Our team's been working. We've got a spreadsheet. You can see it in box, and we're adding to that as we go because we're also interviewing with each, I think there's 6 firms on that spreadsheet, and we're interviewing with them to kind of get some notes for the board. And we've had dialogue with 3 so far, 3 firms, and our goal, we've got a couple lined up to maybe 3 this week. We'll add that information to box so that you can see that being added as we go. And then our next step is going to be for discussion in May. We'd like the board to discuss in May kind of their its expectations for next steps. Our goal is that we have board consensus on moving forward with a firm that the board is unanimously satisfied with. Now, I'm not talking today. And so we'd be happy to bring a recommendation. We'd also be happy to work collaboratively with the board to get to a recommendation. And we'd also be happy if the board wants to take it after we put down on a spreadsheet those options. The goal is we just want to find that just right firm to lead our community and district through a strategic planning process where we're really working on excellence and focusing on that moving forward. So that's my update.
Sorry, I almost skipped you.
No,
I'm
no
gonna
problem.
get this down. I have one more month to give myself before I get mad. Okay, so future meetings, work session will probably be again before this meeting in May at 5 o'clock, and our regular board meeting will be at 6 o'clock on May 13th here. And April 26th, which is a Friday, we have no school because it's not going to snow anymore. And Wednesday, May 22nd is the unbelievably already here last day of school. And Friday, May 24th is graduation. So I appreciate everyone getting us out of here before 8. I said 8 and it is 10 till. Could I have a motion, please? So moved by Lawrence, seconded by Rachel. All those in favor of dismissing, please raise your hand. That is